Sounds beautiful.
Walk the waterfront. Hear the seagulls cry. Watch that boat take my baby to the place where flamingos fly. Said it's sent for me. If you don't, I'll die. 1,000 miles from my baby to the place where flamingos fly. You broke the law, they told him. You gotta have a passport to stay. You're shipping back to the islands on a freighter that's leaving today. Hear the water sigh. Took my heart along with him to the place where flamingos fly. Black is the color of my true love's hair. His face was soft and once fair, the purest eyes, the strongest hand. Walk the waterfront. Hear the seagulls cry. 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles.
Wow. Ah, that was quite beautiful.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am talking with Laurie Antonioli from San Francisco. Laurie and I have known each other for a number of years. not super well, so today I feel excited to get to know you better. We've worked together, and I've worked for the school that she chairs, and yeah, and we've admired each other from a distance.
Indeed. Yes. And everybody knows you.
Well, everybody knows you too.
I don't know. I think you're more, I think you're a bigger star than me.
Who was on that cut?
That was from my Foreign Affair record, and it's an all-European band. The bass player is Nenad Vasilic. The drummer you might know is John Hollenbeck,
Oh, yeah.
and the guitarist is Armin Jafari, who's Albanian.
Yeah.
And
Armin, what was his last name?
Armin Jafari, and it's Xhaferi, I think it is.
Oh,
Spell it.
really nice.
Johannes Enders is a German saxophonist that's on there too, but he wasn't featured on that.
Oh. How did that come about with that a band from Europe?
That configuration. Well, I was living in Europe from 2002 to 2006,
Mm.
and that record has kind of a Balkan jazz flavor to it. Uh, it's not Balkan music, but it does have that vibe, and I have Balkan musicians, so the bass player and the guitarist are from the Balkan region, and uh, yeah, we recorded that. It was kind of interesting. We recorded that. I was living in Vienna at the time, and everybody was in. Well, no, actually, I think Hollenbeck was coming in from Berlin, and Johannes Enders, I think, was in Munich. So it was, everybody came in from different places. We ended up recording it in Slovenia, in Maribor, which at an old radio station, so it was on tape.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool experience. Great big, high ceilings that could accommodate an
Yeah.
orchestra, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. We have a bit of similarity in that too, because I lived in Vienna. Let's see, gosh, um, it was definitely over 20 years ago because I wasn't married to Gary. I probably was married to Gus. So anyway, what happened was one of my friends started an American music school there called AIM,
Uh-huh.
and American Institute of Music. He had gone to GIT, and so he kind of brought that over. And I was the head of the jazz vocal department.
Oh,
And then actually, I left at some point and turned it over to a friend of mine, Leela Thigpen, who still
oh
lives there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she's an old friend of mine, and yeah, that, and also I I can't remember what I'm really bad with years, but around the time that there was a war in oh God, my brain is really not
Yugoslavia?
responding. Pardon me?
In Yugoslavia, the war in Yugoslavia?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you
late
so much.
90s. That would be the late.
Yeah. So right when that was starting, I decided to take a job in Belgrade singing at like the top hotel where the people were staying, like the CNN was staying, and the UN would come in there. So that was an interesting experience too, like
Yeah.
really interesting, who I was working with and what happened, and also how I got out of there because
Were
since
you
the war
working
had
with
started.
Serbian musicians there, or?
Yeah, I was working with musicians from Belgrade who, were radio, they had jobs on the radio, and so we
Mhm.
did some radio things. Yeah, it's a really interesting feeling over there, isn't it? Working with the musicians, and it's different. It's a little different. It's kind of, I don't know, earthy or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the musicians, I think the first time that I lived in Europe was in the early 80s, and it felt a lot more exotic for me to be there as an American jazz musician. And I think at that time, the Europeans were just sort of crazy for Americans and American
Yeah,
music.
yeah.
I don't know if that's still today. I don't know if that's the case, but around the time that I was living there in the 2002 to 2006, I felt like there was a switch going on. I think the European musicians got a lot better at
Yeah.
jazz,
Yeah.
and they're, less interested in giving up their gigs to foreigners coming in rather than just, doing it themselves. And there's a lot of great musicians to pick from over there. And it's a different vibe. I mean, you get a different vibe if an American musician is born in the South or in the East Coast or West Coast, like it's the regions that you're from, it affect how you play somehow, I think, too. You know,
Yeah.
affects your cultural references and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are you from?
I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from the
Oh,
Bay Area.
okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Marin County until I was 14, I think. My mom remarried a cowboy and moved us to Elko, Nevada, which was
Oh,
startling
wow.
to say the
Quite.
least. And then
Yeah.
from there, I went to Portland, Oregon to go to college. They had a pioneering vocal jazz program at Mount Hood College. And so that's where I went after high school.
Who was teaching?
Hal Malcolm was the teacher, and he was one of the first to start a vocal jazz program in schools,
Oh,
actually. So, yeah, yeah. The Northwest was that's sort of where the whole vocal jazz ensemble swing choir thing came from. Was a lot of the colleges and high schools even. Roosevelt High School in Seattle was really fantastic in the 70s and produced a lot of good musicians. Mount Hood did too. So
Mount Hood. Yeah,
yeah,
Mount Hood. I definitely know of.
yeah.
Yeah, there was he might still be there. Who's the director there is
Dave Barterman.
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while since I thought about that because I was doing some adjudication,
Hmm.
for some of those high school festivals.
Right.
Mount Hood was always like blowing everybody away. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a good place to land when I was 18.
Yeah.
Get there and get exposed to a lot of things. And yeah, and I'm still in touch with my classmates from the time that I was there in the 70s.
Wow.
People that like Essiet, the bass player. I don't know if you know
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
him. Rudy Petschauer is a drummer. He's played with Jack McDuff and tons of a lot of organ trio stuff. But he was there. Steve Christopherson, who's Nancy King's.
Oh, him well, yeah.
Yes, we were all in school together. Who else? Frank Griffith. He lives over in England now. So yeah, so it was nice. It was a good community to be part of.
That's cool.
Oh,
Um, um, Someone's going to be buying your Foreign Affairs album. Oh, he just did.
okay. Bye.
Rolling.
Music? What?
Yeah, he said, here I go increasing my music library.
Oh, good.
Hi, Tanya Grubbs. Uh, let's see. Yeah, they're trying to ask, are you a contralto or ten? I don't think you're a tenor. You're a contralto, right?
Well, I actually sing can sing way down very low that might put me in a tenor range for sure. And I have a pretty big range actually. But I would probably refer to myself as an alto. I'm a female voice, it's alto. But I sing in the tenor range quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all those three were suggested.
Oh, okay.
Everybody had an opinion. That's great. um, so let's see. I'm just seeing. Oh, hi, Cecily. Cecily Gardner says hello.
Oh, hi, Cecily. Should I put my chat on? Am I able to see?
Yeah, if you want to, just keep the
Yeah.
sound down on that one. And also Andrea Wolpers sends her best.
Okay. Yeah. She's teaching for the California Jazz Conservatory this summer.
Oh,
In a scheduling
cool.
class. Yeah. I mean, we were hoping that she would be here just like a lot of other people. Dina DeRose is doing a workshop from Austria. She's in Austria, and Andrea's in Brooklyn. We have a couple of other East Coast people Kate and Gary and others.
Yeah, Rosanna Eckert says hi.
Hi, Rosanna Eckert. Well, I was gonna say we got to get you out here, but maybe we'll just get you online.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Oh, Andrea and Ken are going to be on here next Monday.
Oh, very good. Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. I Ken used to live here, and so That's how I know Ken and yeah, and Andrea. Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be really fun. But back to you. So, okay, so were you into solo jazz singing at that time, or were you more into group jazz singing
No, I've
at
always
coming
been.
up?
Well, I mean, I was trying to become a solo artist in jazz before I understood what was involved because I was playing guitar and doing singer-songwriter type stuff. So when I went off to college, it was not my aspiration to be in a choir, but that was all that they had to do for the singers was to sing in the choir. So that's what I did in school. But I was going out to jam sessions and doing little gigs and stuff pretty early on in my college career. So yeah.
Yeah.
I had
Okay.
the good
So,
fortune of living in Portland, Oregon, where Nancy King was performing all the time, and I
yeah.
heard her countless times, during that era, 76, 77, 78, and that was just fantastic. So,
Yeah. Nancy King. Yep. For those of you who don't know Nancy King who are listening, you should go listen to Nancy King because she's a singer's singer. You know,
yeah,
people like Laurie and I have known about her for years, and um, she's a very unique person, special singer. Yeah, she's just she's kind of like the Carmen McRae of modern music. She's really substantial, right? And she kind of led the way for a
yeah. I
lot.
mean, her phrasing is incredibly creative. She knows every song by heart and does them often in the original keys. She doesn't read music, but she can improvise like just amazingly. And she's got an incredible mind and incredible creative flair. And she's immersed in the traditions of the music, but she's got her own thing. A lot of times she's singing songs that might be considered in the wrong key, but she bounces back and forth on the octaves to kind of make her way through it, and it just turns into this very hip style, actually.
Yeah.
So
And also, she does have a big range, or
yeah,
she did, coming up. I mean, she really did have a wide range, and it's probably because she was doing that,
yeah,
right?
right.
Um, there's this one cut on one of my favorite all-time records, which I had the producer of the record on, Tim Weston, who's the son of Joe Stafford and Paul Western,
Oh,
better
okay.
known as Jonathan and Darlene Edwards.
Okay.
You know Jonathan and Darlene Edwards.
I do not know them.
Oh my God, Laurie, you have missed out on the comedy team
Oh, oh
of
no.
musicians. Oh yeah, you gotta. We'll have to. I'll have to. I'm gonna make a note to send
Your
you.
link.
Send Laurie, Jonathan, and Darlene. Oh yeah, it's just painfully. You can't listen to more than three songs because she's singing flat and he's playing extra bars. I mean, it's
Oh,
really
one of those. Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tim Weston made this gorgeous record. It was a tribute to Rodgers and Hammerstein. People on here have already heard me talk about it many times, but one of my, well, there were two of my favorite cuts. One was a Nan Schwartz arrangement of This Nearly Was Mine, sung by Mark Murphy.
Mm.
You know, perfect Mark Murphy song. And then the second one was a Van Dyke Parks arrangement of a song that a lot of people don't know. Everybody's Got a Home But Me, and Nancy sang it.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Maybe later if we run out of things to listen to, we'll listen. But it was just incredible.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
yeah, I have to share that one with you too. I'll make sure
Thank you, Kathy.
Rogers.
You are on the
Okay.
information highway.
So hello, 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 hello. So back to you.
Oh, not that again.
So, okay, so what happened after college?
Oh gosh, a lot.
What was the first thing that happened?
The first thing after college, well, there was sort of a meshing. I got a scholarship to go from Mount Hood down to Cal State Long Beach. And so I
Uh-huh.
was there for one semester only. But at that time, one of my classmates there was John Patitucci, who
Oh.
who helped me with my homework a couple times, my counterpoint homework. I'll never forget that. But and I was only in LA for maybe 8 months or 9 months, and then I moved to San Francisco. And little known fact, unless you've dug around deeply into articles and stuff, at that time I was in a relationship with Joe Henderson, the famous tenor saxophonist. So he was
Oh.
living in San Francisco. So I came back to the city to be closer to him, and then also just to be in San Francisco where I wanted to live. And within, I'm going to say, a year and a half of moving to San Francisco after, so this was maybe 1979-ish, 80, I ended up going out on the road with Pony Poindexter and doing
Oh.
bebop, all bebop all night, wall to wall bebop. Everywhere we went, we went to Europe, and I spent 8 months
Wow.
basically on the road with Pony in my early 20s, like 21, 22 years old. And that was great. That was a great education. I mean, it was a lot of gigs, all jazz, picking up rhythm sections in different cities and countries and what
Wow.
have you. So I got back to the States. Pony had we nothing got recorded, which is unfortunate. We were supposed to be in Paris doing a record date with Kenny Drew on piano, and
Yeah.
Pony had a stroke like 2 days before
Oh.
our record date. So
Oh. Wow.
brought him back to California, and so that sort of changed that whole European sort. I thought I was going to end up like living over there for years, but I brought him
Oh.
home, and then there were no gigs back in Europe, so I stayed in the Bay Area at that point, and that was a nice time to be living in San Francisco. There's a lot going on and a lot of jazz, a lot of little clubs, a lot of opportunities, lots of people that you could hang with and do things with, do music, sit in. It's just a vibrant scene at that time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us that
Yeah.
were on that scene. It was like, well, Bobby McFerrin and the McFerrin family, as very dear friends of mine. Of course, Mark Murphy was here. Michelle Hendricks was here. All just so many different musicians. Kitty Margolis and Madeline Eastman were here. So everybody was out singing in the clubs, and there was just all kinds of places to go. Like any day of the
Yeah.
week, you could go somewhere and hear pretty good jazz and maybe even get to sit in, which people don't get invited to sit in that much anymore, I noticed, because
It's
our,
true.
our,
You know.
our gigs are so precious, right? You have like a showcase, or you're doing this thing, or it's a CD release, or it's always like an event now that when you have a gig often,
Yeah.
rather than just like, oh yeah, I got Thursdays at so-and-so club, there's no cover, and why don't you come and sit in on the third set? Like that would be how that went. Those days are gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Those days, very rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. The scene has changed quite a bit. Yes, LA has been like that too. When I first came to LA, I was 21, and yeah, it was a really different scene. I talked to Roy McCurdy yesterday. I knew him at that time.
I did. I used to sit in. He used to be at a jam session on the Queen Mary. Do you remember that
Oh,
place? The Jazz
yeah,
Safari.
yeah, the Jazz Safari. Yep.
Yeah, Roy
Uh,
McCready was
Al
like,
Williams. Al Williams ran that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those days. I miss those days. I spoke to Catalina from Catalina's Jazz Club. And we were talking about I really know that she misses those days. Those days of real jazz musicians hanging around and making jokes and hugging each other and you know the love and the jokes and the joy. That's what she kept saying, the joy, and the music, of course. But yeah, uh, I mean, we have joy too, but it's just that was such a real strong cell in time. It was really. That's
Yeah,
what
of
got me,
course
and
now
that's what kept
it's
me into jazz. Yeah,
yeah, well, I mean, because you're into I was into it for the music, but I was also into it partially for the hang factor. You know, there was
yeah,
just a
yeah,
community of people that I liked, and we all seemed to, get along, and again the humor and just the yeah the camaraderie. Like I could go like now, like if I go to SF Jazz or Yoshi's which are great big rooms, you can go in and maybe not see anybody you know. It's just the audience, right? But in the little jazz club, you'd walk in and you'd see like half a dozen people that you knew pretty well that would also be hanging out. So it just created a different connection to each other, I guess you'd say. So,
yeah. So it sounds like your musical history was really uh, quite varied. You were singing bebop at an early age. I mean, that's not a real common thing in your early 20s to be totally ensconced in bebop.
no, I got exposed to it when I was at Mount Hood College, and at that
Yeah,
time, that was really sort of where all the horn players were at in terms of what they were playing or striving toward. And uh, and there's a great record. There's actually two or three records by a guy named Charlie Ventura. He had something called the Bop to the People
yeah,
Band, and that was in the late '40s. They recorded in like 1948 with Jackie Kane and Roy Kral. So those bands
yeah.
used the voices to sing in tandem with the horns, and there was something about the sound of the voice with the horn line that I was really, really turned on to. And in fact, when I got back to the States was it, no, was it before or after? In any case, one of the first bands I was ever in was with a guy named Vince Wallace, who was a tenor saxophonist, kind of an underground kind of cult figure kind of guy. And he was into that. So I learned a bunch of his material and sang again in tandem with the horn and did a lot of improvising and that kind of stuff. So my first big gigs, like real gigs out there in the world, were singing wordlessly, singing horn lines, improvising, and that kind of thing. So I didn't come in, even though I was like a singer, like with my Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and all that stuff when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. When I got into jazz, I really headed into instrumental music. And it wasn't for anything other than that's just what I liked. So that's what I did. I've sort of been like that all my life. It's just like, this is what I want to do. This is what I like. And then I find it, but it wasn't. So I didn't have the same kind of repertoire that most singers had at that time, like like My Funny Valentine or any of the just sort of typical tunes, Autumn Leaves and stuff. I just didn't do. I kind of didn't even really learn those tunes until later down the road. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's like,
That's
oops,
funny.
I forgot to learn My Funny Valentine. So, yeah, even now there's some songs I don't really know. I mean, I know a lot of songs, but even now, like somebody will bring in a tune that's really familiar, and it's like, yeah, I don't have those lyrics memorized or anything like that. So yeah, so that was an unusual jumping off point, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So was there a later time that you did actually get into more standards and working in that genre?
Mm, I've always done standards, of course, and if I'm doing gigs like with a pickup band back in the day when we used to do gigs and there were pickup bands, I might do mostly or at least half of known standards and then maybe some more unusual pieces. But I've
Yeah,
never really been like a working singer in the sense like I remember back in the day. Some of the singers around town had huge books of like they had pop tunes, they had like the sort of fusion music, Al Jarreau type stuff that everybody was doing during that era. Things that you could do at a wedding, things you could do for people to dance to, and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So I never put that kind of repertoire together. And I think what happened to me, it was sort of interesting. I got back from Europe and I'd been working like a lot of concerts, a lot of clubs. It was really great. And I think, like in that time I got significantly better just from all the performing. And I got back to the Bay Area and I got offered to be in this fusion band that was working 5 nights a week, which at that time you could do around here, like in restaurants. It was like a restaurant gig band. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'll never forget, we used to work at this one place called the Hayward Fishery. And there was these like little loudspeakers like on either side of the stage. And I think I was actually singing through the house loudspeakers, which, is just like not a great sound. But then they'd go like, Anderson, party of four, Anderson, party of four. And it would actually cut out the music that the band was like mid thing. And it's go, Anderson, party of four. And then four people would get up and leave. So you're in this holding pen singing for people and playing for people that are waiting for their tables. That's a shitty gig. It's like the
Oh, God.
airport lounge singer that Bill Murray does or something. But what you
Right.
find out is that people, when they're hungry, they can't really listen to music. But after they've had their meal, maybe a glass of wine, then they would come back out and listen. So the later crowd. But anyway, I'll say those types of gigs drove me into the world of day jobs because I
Oh,
I didn't have the emotional fortitude to do those types of gigs. I just couldn't. It was killing me actually. So I
yeah, yeah.
decided very, very young to have a day job and only do music that was artistically what I wanted to do. And I knew what I could do and what I couldn't do. And this wasn't like an arrogance thing as much as like I felt like I was getting worse and worse and worse. The more of these kind of commercial type gigs I did, I just felt like my singing got worse. My spirit was getting low because it just means too much to me, to be a musician. So that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean a lot to other people that do those types of gigs. But for me, I mean, I literally would have stopped singing eventually if I kept doing that. So this was
Yeah,
reservation, to do it that way, have
yeah.
some kind of job and then just, I always managed to find time for music anyway, whether I had a job, day job or not, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I was just thinking of a friend I had on the other day, a trombone player who is the head of the music department at Saddleback College in Orange County, Joey Sellers, and he,
Huh?
I guess he's known for his bummer speech at the beginning of class at the classes, like the beginning of the semester, about you can forget becoming a musician and making a living at it unless you really that's you want to like live on the cheap. He goes down that rabbit hole and then he says this is for art. That's what we're doing. That's what we're actually working on. We're working on developing you for art. So, yeah, and anyway, he goes way into it, but and apparently he's known for that speech.
That particular welcome.
So, yeah,
Well, I remember
I mean,
my teacher said to me once, are you really sure you want to do this? Because he said the circle is going to get really small. And he said, you'll understand what I mean by that as when you get older, because I'm like 18, 19 at that time. And I get it now. It is I mean, like, for instance, you and I don't really know each other, but we've known of each other for years. It's a small circle that jazz musicians are in. And even worldwide, we all are just like 1 degree of separation, maybe 2 degrees, but pretty much we're all connected. And um, it's a special club we're in.
it is a special club. It's a tribe.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Um, okay. So, in your life, you get a straight job and you're still working. I guess at that time you're still singing for yourself, but just
Yeah.
more for yourself, right?
No, I mean, I was doing gigs, whenever I
Oh,
could.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then when I had my daughter at the age of 25, so that changed a lot of different things. But yeah, so yeah, it's not like I ever stopped singing or something like that, but I wasn't out promoting myself or, trying to be a big
Yeah,
star.
trying to get that gig. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then when uh, you probably got into the school a bit later, right?
Into, well,
Yeah.
so I mean, there's a whole part of
Conservatory.
my career that I, again, like I don't really talk, I haven't talked about this a lot, but I had a drug problem for quite a few years, and I've got 22 years clean and sober now. So
Oh,
it
congratulations.
was, yeah, after I got clean, I was shortly after that I was invited over to teach in Graz, which now this is like 2002. But Mark Murphy and Sheila Jordan and Jay Clayton were, I was
Yeah.
friends with them. They were my friends slash mentors slash teachers. You know, it really lovely people. And they recommended me to go over to Graz and teach in 2002. So at that point, I was, 4 years clean and just kind of recovering, and I quit my day job. I quit my day job to go to Europe, and that was on a whim because it was only supposed to be for one semester, as just as a visiting professor, and I ended up being over there for 4 years. So I was really
Oh.
glad I quit my day job, but you have to have something that good to quit your job over. That was a nice thing. So that really, like in terms of my career, I had a lot of early activity. I made a record with George Cable's duo record called Soul Eyes, and that was, you know, significant. Soul Eyes was written by Mal Waldron, and I met him in Munich at the Domicile in Munich. And it was interesting when I met him. I had been out on the road with Pony, and I had a room in Munich, and so I was at the Domicile all the time, which was their sort of Keystone Corner type club. Everybody played there, and I'd been singing all around on my gigs this song called "Left Alone," which is also by Mal Waldron and Billie Holiday, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a tune. It's just got a 4-bar bridge. It's like it's a cool song, interesting
Yeah,
tune.
it is.
And I was sitting at the bar at the Domicile, and I looked to my left, and there was Mal Waldron sitting next to
Oh.
me, and I was like, "Oh my God!" So I told him about "Left Alone" and thanked him for the song, and said, I really enjoyed it, and this and that. And then he invited me to his place, and he gave me his personal lyrics to "Soul Eyes," which I was the
Oh,
first singer to
wow.
record that song. Since then, a few people have recorded it, but I was the first. And those were handwritten by Mal on a, you know,
Wow.
piece of lined paper. So, yeah, so that became the title to my first record, and that was in the '80s. And so I think that came out like in '85, I think. And then there was like a little activity after that, but pretty much from the '90s until 2002, I was pretty dark, and well, in more ways than one. I had gone dark. The lights were out. I wasn't out performing a lot. Although I say that, and then I realized like I had this whole relationship with Richie Byrack during that time where we were recording, and one of those
Oh,
recordings came out later, and I did some
oh,
gigs with him and some festivals and stuff. So I never like went all the way under, and I never like totally stopped, but it just wasn't like it is now, where I make a complete, like I've been able to make a living as a jazz musician since 2002. So that's 20 years. So that's pretty good, especially
yeah.
when you've done what I had to do to, make a living. So it feels really good, but it's mostly in education now. But in the meantime, once I kind of got myself back together from 2002 until now, I've put out 6 records. So, and I've got more. I've got a lot of records I'd like to make still. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there's the early years, the sort of spotty years in between, and then since 2002. So that's kind of been my odd resume.
Yeah. And when did you start at the California Jazz Conservatory, which was called something else before?
The jazz school.
The jazz
Well, I
school.
started in the role that I'm in now in 2006, but prior to that, I had taught there. So, like in 2000, I had taught some classes and what have you. So they knew me and I knew them, and so on.
Okay. Yeah. I was telling Laurie before that I actually thought she owned that school.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
man. I thought you were like, hey, yeah, this is my
no,
school.
no.
Um, that was a long time ago that I came. Long, long time ago.
Yeah,
Probably, no, I don't know.
I can
You
go.
said you were there from 2006 on.
What's
What'd you
that?
say?
I said I can look in the database and find out when you were there.
Oh my God. Anyway, that was fun. Yeah, so man, your experience is really deep, very deep, with a lot of deep players, and it's really it's really interesting. And this record that we heard, and we should play another cut on whatever cut or that you prefer, but that was uh, sounded like it was not too terribly long ago, I'm guessing, just because it seems like you have a voice, like I don't mean a voice, I mean a voice, and very distinctively within the music, and the music is modern, and yeah, it sounded great. So uh, was that done not too long ago?
The one that you just played from Foreign
Yeah,
Affair, that was
yeah.
done. I think we recorded it in 2003 and it came out in 2004. So it's, you know, it's
Oh,
in
so it's
the,
quite back, yeah.
yeah, it's not from the first part of my career, but from this,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to call it the middle part because hopefully there'll be another part going
The
forward.
blue period.
Yeah, exactly.
um, well, let's listen to what is your last record?
The last record's called The Constant Passage of Time. And why don't you play that first song, Longing for You? I'll tell you the story because this involves another singer, Lorraine Feather. So um, I had booked Lorraine to come and do a concert and workshop, I think, at the school. And she was going to come as a duo with Russell Ferrante. And then she ended up moving to the East Coast. I don't know if she's still there, but
She
uh,
is. She's on the
yeah,
East Coast. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I was really disappointed that she wasn't able to do the gig with us. But Russell still was interested in possibly coming up, maybe to do a workshop. And then I thought, and we had that spot available for a concert, and I thought, well, maybe I can just have Russell do it. Maybe I can do the concert with Russell. I've never done that kind of thing before. I just like, I'm gonna step on in here and take this gig. But it sort of happened organically and naturally, and somehow he agreed, and so I ended up writing lyrics to one of his songs, which is the one you're going to play,
Oh, cool.
Russell, which is uh, we'll do a little test on anybody who's listening to see if you can figure out what the meter is on this. And
Okay. Well, if Russell's
I'll tell
involved.
you, the only person who got it, this is I've like tested everybody. The only person who got it was Bobby McFerrin.
Oh
And,
gosh, now the pressure is on.
I'll give you a clue as to what Bobby said. It reminded him. He said, Russell Ferrante, his compositions are like a triangle inside of a square, or a triangle inside of a circle. That's what he said.
When he was here, in the beginning, he was just, he was a piano player around town, and he played a lot. He was really popular. I worked with him a lot, and he had this one song which we joke about today. That was like that. It had these two parts. Yeah, it was just. I mean, I still remember the song because just do. And recently, when he was on, he gave this exercise that he works on, and I just could not get this exercise out of my head, and I wrote lyrics to it, and he so he and I are going to work on that.
Oh,
It was
nice.
just a beautiful exercise. You probably would like it too. It's
Yeah.
very intervallic, really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But okay, now here I have your EPK, and I have a teaser.
You want to go to longing. So you could actually just type longing after my name above there and you'll
Okay.
get it. Or longing for you.
Longing for you.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yep. There you got it.
Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus.
Not that.
Not that one.
Skip ads. Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, who is this with, the musicians?
Matt Clark is on piano, and Matt Clark, Jason Lewis on drums, Dan Feisley on bass, Sheldon Brown on horns.
Okay,
And
cool.
Dave McNabb on guitar.
And sorry, who did you say?
Dave McNabb on guitar.
Okay, cool.
Drifting along, exquisite ocean of sky billowing. Clouds drift by, you are gone, and I am longing. Will we ever patches of green, abundant natural life beckoning. It goes round cycling. Are you longing? Will you ever? Purposeful days, the constant passage of time tumbling. Is it true you are gone I am longing. Will we never longing for you? Longing for for
Very beautiful. Okay, so somebody asked if it was in 7.
No.
Hey, Tim Weston, no, it is not in 7. And then once he asked that, I started counting. It almost seemed like it wasn't in 8. Like it was, I mean, it wasn't like, maybe was it something 16 or no?
I can give you the answer.
Yeah, give us the answer.
It's in 5, but
Oh,
it's divided very oddly. And at first, if you were going twice as fast, you can find it sort of in 10, and then you realize that it's moving slower and like that. But so the
so
guys in the
1,
band,
2, 3, 4. Is it 1,
1, 2,
2?
3, 4, 5, 1, 2, it's like that kind
Oh,
of a deal.
I
And,
see.
yeah, and but like on the original, on the Yellow Jackets, the drummer on the and I asked Russell about this. I said, can't you just kind of feel like where the melody comes in? Like that's sort of how I'm doing it. He's like, oh no, that's like we did it to a click track. It is very precise. So the band
Oh,
had to wrestle with the precision aspects. The drummer played a little differently than the Yellow Jackets because the Yellow Jackets he was like almost playing like this sort of double time thing over the top of it, and I just felt my way through it because every time I tried to count, I would step on myself. So I just and
yeah.
it's
That's how that's I think a lot of people, once they learn the piece, if they have to learn it, they go through the math. But then most people, I think, like rely on their feel, right? For intricate
yeah.
time.
I think sometimes you really do have to rely on the math, especially if you're like singing in a choir and you've got a bunch of odd meters and mixed meter stuff going on. You just have to count. But
Yeah, yeah.
in this case, it's just me and I just told the band, just don't mind me, just stay the course. I'll meet up with you somewhere there at the end. So no, but I think I got it.
Sorry, I missed that word. Don't mind,
Don't mind me. Is that what I just said?
maybe.
Maybe.
Because you're floating, right? You're kind of,
Yeah,
where it is,
yeah, but
but
I would just catch up. We would all end in the right place. So, and we did. But that
yeah,
was
yeah.
one of our least. That's one of the band's least favorite songs, mostly because unless we played it all the time, we had to actually really rehearse it again before we could do the gig. So that was like always the first song, in the rehearsals if we hadn't played it for a little while. But yeah,
That's cool. Wait, I just have to open my door because I'm kind of warm. Yeah, a little more air circulating.
if anybody's interested in that chart, I don't think Russell would mind if if they want to write to me.
There
It's
you
fun to
go.
look at the chart and try to see how that all fits together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Do you write music?
I do some writing, but mostly I'm a lyricist. So I've written lyrics to for years and years and years. I mean, I used to write my own songs on the guitar when I was 12, 13, 14. By the time I got to Mount Hood, I started writing lyrics to bebop tunes. That's how I met Joe Henderson, was through this lyric writing that I was doing, and somebody gave me Joe's number, and somehow I had the. I don't think I really knew who he was at the time, and I had written lyrics to one of his tunes, and he liked it, and then he invited me to go up to Jazz Alley in Seattle and sit in with his band, which was like Charlie Hayden and Joanne Brackeen and Danny Spencer on drums. So I did that while I was like 19 or 20. So I started writing. Like I have a whole repertoire of Joe's music that's lyricized.
Oh,
I have gazillions of Richie Byrac's songs,
wow.
a lot of his famous ones, and then a bunch of stuff that has never been released. I've written lyrics to there's a pianist in Europe. He passed away, but Fritz Power. I've got a huge repertoire of his music, and then lots of random things. But the best thing is to work with a live composer if you can. So in all three, so interestingly, like with Joe Henderson and with Richie Byrack, they had very specific storylines, or at least feelings that were attached to a particular song. There was a sort of a reason behind it. Whereas Fritz Power, he didn't have that. He said, "Oh no, you just you just do your own thing." Like he gave me no inside information on what he was thinking when he composed it. But with Richie and Joe, they both had that. So when you work with a live composer, and it doesn't have to be a famous person, obviously, you can enhance the stories if you can get a little info from the composer. But with that said, I mean, some of my better lyrics were written to people that I'd never talked to, or that were dead already or something.
Yeah.
Like Miles Davis or so. Some.
Yeah. Wow. I guess we kind of see what's in your mind for future recordings.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to have original material whenever I put something out. I think the only record there isn't is the Joni record that I did. Songs of Shadow, Songs of Light. But those were pretty unique arrangements of her music.
Yeah, yeah. I remember one time I was speaking to Denise Donatelli after, I think it was after her first bigger record, and I said, "Wow, this is great." And she said, "Yeah, the good news is I have these gorgeous arrangements now, And then I said, "Is there bad news?" She said, "Yeah, I have these gorgeous arrangements." Because, you can't really accomplish, or it's challenging to accomplish the same kind of effect when you travel. You have to
Right.
with a pickup band, and even if you send stuff ahead, and it's just a challenge.
I took my band to we went to Albuquerque in November, and then to Santa Fe, and the day that we were performing in Albuquerque, it was Joni Mitchell's birthday. So we did pretty much all Joni show with all those arrangements, and that was super fun. And I have been invited to do the Joni material, but to use a local band, and I've said no, to other things, because I can't do that unless I've got my band with me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of a singer's life. Being invited to go somewhere and especially a particular show, and yeah, you have to make sure that if that's what's happening,
right,
you get what you need.
Well, I mean, the days of being able to take your band around with you on the road are pretty much gone, even more so than ever. But my band is too big. There's 6 of us, and it's just too many people. So my next project will probably be maybe just me plus 2 or something.
That seems to be happening a lot.
Yeah. Well, what else? I mean, what can you do? Like, I mean, it's just, I can't take the band anywhere without losing money, basically, is the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even I just think just what's being done. I mean, there's always going to be larger groups that are desired to be heard. But like in January, I went to New York for the Jazz Congress, and so I came back here, and well, I actually came back here. I brought Michelle Nicole. Do you know her
Oh
from
yeah.
Australia?
Hmm.
Yeah. So she was in New York too, and I brought her back, and I had created a workshop and a gig for her. So she sang with Larry Koontz on guitar and Derek Oles on bass. And this is in the same week. I had the greatest week. Then there was Luciana Souza performed with Chico Pinera and Scott Colley. And then Sina E uh, performed with Larry Koontz and Josh Nelson. I think maybe the week or two after Kate McGarry came and she performed with, Keith and
Gary.
um,
Gary Versace.
Gary. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just so great to hear singers who know what they're doing, real musicians and who are subtle and or have the subtleties to bring and who are musicians. They're aware that they're a part of the band and they have beautiful voices and it's just really great to hear a trio. I love trios. I think they're just pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, all those people you named are stellar
Um,
artists.
oh God, put me in heaven. I mean, I really do enjoy hearing the kind of semi-pro singers who are students. I really do enjoy hearing them. Sometimes I just love sitting in my workshops and listening to them. I'd rather hear them than go hear a professional singer sometimes, because their heart is in it.
I'm much more forgiving if I'm listening to students, and I'll go so far as to say that I just think I'm just so touched and moved by watching people get up and sing and be vulnerable and all that. So I think very highly of those students, but I'm less likely to want to go out and hear jazz at this point. Like there's a few people I'll go hear, but I kind of don't really do that much anymore.
Well, usually when I go out, I think I hear instrumentalists. I too, I have a short fuse for either instrumentalists or vocalists who do what I call not respecting the whole thing. They're too ego filled or they're I mean I know people are in different phases of their growth too. I understand that, but I can have a short fuse, but not often. But when I do some people have seen my short fuse and they're like, what is wrong with you? Because I will be sitting in a club and listening and I'll suddenly it's almost like I have Tourette's. It's like, oh, I can't believe that they're. Oh God, and then I like realize what's going on. I calm myself down, and then in another few minutes, I'm like again, I'm exploding, and but those singers I mentioned.
That's why you should never sit in the front row.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Unless it's like Kate McGarry or somebody like that, or Luciana.
Exactly. Well, all those singers I mentioned. I mean, yeah, yeah, they're just they respect everything, and they're giving it really their deepest from the deepest spot, which is something I love to talk about that kind of stuff with people because there's so many people who think like that, and I think it's such a worthwhile perspective to share with humankind,
The ability to dig deep and reach people.
Yes, and also I was talking about this yesterday with Roy McCurdy. The elegance of um, being there and having kind of an ethics and respect and commitment to the high quality of music and how it relates to spirit and uh, it's like a dedication to serve it and to bring it forth. Yeah, that to me, I just super get turned on by that, and I think a lot of us feel that. So I like to talk about it because it's something that keeps coming up, but everybody speaks about it a little different because of our experiences in life, you know.
Well, I think
Yeah.
not all great musicians, but a lot of them really transcend their own ego and get out of the way for the music to happen. And when that's happening, then everything's kind of flowing the way that it should, right? And the audience feels it, the musicians feel it, and it's just and it takes the audience participating by listening to create, complete the circle, so that there's like this kind of I mean, there's an interaction, energetic interaction, and you're going to get that from an audience if you're completely authentic and sincere, then everybody is going to be good with that, you know. So you don't have to be the greatest player or the greatest singer in the world to touch people. Actually, you could be, you know, uh, a competent singer that knows how to deliver something with such emotion and pureness of intent that you can't help but be moved by it. And that's kind of in contrast when you talk about people like, say, Kate or Luciana, who are so technically proficient and so sort of flawless with their voices. They also have the emotional content to put on that, and that's when it gets really really spectacular, if you've got somebody at that level that also accesses their deepest core. So and that's where all the magic is, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're so lucky to be involved in this uh, plan of action on the planet, you know.
Yeah.
Gosh, you know, we're just really fortunate. You know, I mean, I know plenty of people who are happy in their lives and they're not musicians, but still, I feel super lucky about it, you know, and super happy about it, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Let me see if anybody has said something. Lots of people are digging this conversation. And my friend Kanga thought that song was in 9/8. Oh, and Roland bought The Constant Passage of Time also.
Good. Is that coming through my website or at
No,
Amazon?
Roland, how are you buying these? He'll tell us. Yeah, Toby Simmons is going to browse in your discography. Oh, and she tried so hard to get into your award event at NAMM.
What event was that?
Award event at NAMM?
Award event. Am I losing my mind? Was I somewhere that I don't remember? It's entirely possible.
Did you go to NAMM? Have you been to NAMM?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
I've been to, Jazz Congress and,
yeah. Don't you love Jazz Congress?
yeah, I didn't go this year because I was down in New Orleans at the Gen conference.
Yeah, yeah,
Pick one, you know.
yeah. I know it's hard to go to both. Michelle did, but
But
uh,
she came over from Australia.
yeah, she just thought, I'm just
I
going to
saw
bomb
her in New
the
Orleans. Yeah.
quad. Yeah, I love
Her
her.
purple hair.
Oh, she's a doll, and
Love
she has such a
her.
great singing, beautiful singing. Yeah, she's really cool. As a matter of fact, she stayed at my house, and several times I was kind of amused. My husband is one of those guys. If you sat next to him at a bar, you would think he's a really nice guy. You know, you just walk away thinking that, right, about him. But he's a little more conservative, you know, and he's although he did a job that I considered artistic, he never thought of him in those. He never thought of himself in those terms. So, and he's not particularly into jazz. You know, he's more into rock and blues, and so it just cracks me up when how he relates to the people I invite to stay at our house. You know, and several times I came back from being out for some reason, and they were deep in conversation, and I was like, oh. That's interesting. Okay, cool. She's very open-hearted, right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
very engaging.
yeah.
Lovely, lovely person.
Let's see. I knew there was a good reason why I like you, Laurie. He's the guy who bought. I just Googled you, and my birthday is March 10th.
Oh, another Pisces, eh? Okay.
Let's see. Oh, Tanya Grubbs also is the same date. Huh. Um, let's see. Unity. Toby Simmons said Unity. Maybe that was instead of the NAM. Unity. I don't know. I'm not sure what she's speaking of, but you could ask her after this. Um, Mark is asking. I was wondering what is the greatest challenge that your students have to overcome when it comes to perfecting their singing?
Oh, wow. I think the list could be pretty long. Uh, biggest challenge. I mean, you have the technical aspects of the voice which need to be addressed. Uh,
Uh,
you have the musicianship issues that need to be addressed if you're going to be a professional. So, I mean, I think that what's happened now with jazz is there are many, 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 many opportunities for amateur singers to go to a camp and study with the greats. You can study with Sheila Jordan and Jay Clayton and Rhiannon, and you can go to a workshop at Omega with Bobby McFerrin. There's all the European events and places. I have a vocal intensive every year that Theo Bleckman and I do. Um, and so, let's see, how do I say this? People that are not going to be professionals have a different sort of agenda, I think, in terms of like what they should expect from themselves, or even, what, like how challenging of an environment they want to put themselves in, as opposed to people that are trying to develop as an artist and as a professional. So I'm sort of talking about the artist and professional people more,
mhm.
because a lot of people take classes and workshops, and
Yeah.
you know there's only sometimes the one of the main things might just be psychological, in terms of like just being able to get over their fear of singing in front of people. So that might be for a certain
Yeah.
type of person.
Yeah.
But I things are very different now than they were 20 years ago. And when I think about my younger students, so 18 to say 25, they have a whole
Hmm.
different set of problems and anxieties than like people my age did. And that's because of the internet, it's
Yeah.
because of the marketing, it's because of social media. And so, you can have a perfectly talented developing, nobody's developed at 18, but you could have an 18-year-old that's very talented, that gets really hung up on what should my persona be, or what is going to be, you know,
Yeah.
that what's my who am I, what do I put out into the world? And my answer to that is always being as authentic as you can be, to be yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. It's a lot easier to copy trends, copy different ways that people sing now. There's a lot of sort of habitual weird pronunciation, sort of hip singing type stuff going on, and I hear that a lot. It used to really bother me, and now I'm over it. But I think it's generational. So the young singers definitely are trying to have an appeal. The playing field has changed in terms of how music is consumed, how it's just the whole thing. So it's a very odd time. And when you're talking to jazz musicians, which you mostly are, I mean, it's like that guy said, we're thinking about the art. That's usually the place that I would, hope and think that people would stay, which includes, practicing and developing your craft and understanding the history of the music and la 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 la, all these things we know. But I think that a lot of young singers are very concerned about how to even have a career, So they're working on their music, but they're also trying to work on their image, on what they're putting out there. So I think there's some distractions going on right now for young people in terms of developmentally. Some, I mean, there's always one or two grand, very talented people that rise to the top. But, I'm just talking in general, people that are in school. So that's one thing I'm seeing. As far as, other challenges, kind of in the same boat, but different, is that I think people need to figure out, what they like, what they love, what they have a passion for, so that they can go towards that. So if you think that you want to sing jazz and you start getting into the repertoire and you realize, I just don't really like any of these songs, then that may not actually be for you, so you shouldn't have to force that. So, whatever can be done to get the skills and then keep the passion and I don't know if I'm answering this question. It's a hard question to answer because it's not one size fits all, but I'm trying to make it be
Right,
that.
right.
This answer, it's not going very well, but
Well, I
it,
think if I can interrupt. I think what you've said is the biggest thing that you've said is to lead somebody to do what they really love, and then and I guess the implication is to practice it and to learn about it and to move forward towards it. I think that's a great answer. I mean, of course we can get picayune. You're welcome. I mean, we can get picayune, of course, I mean, and if you or I gave a class on a subject, that's what we would do. We'd get picayune about it. But in general, I think that is the answer. When we have I have a few new students who've come, and I always ask them first what they want, and that can change. You know what I mean? It can change from the first comment out of their mouth, even to the end of the lesson, or it could change after a week, or after a month, or at 2 months, or whatever. So, and that's life, So, and I, like you, I think the lessons of life are, I don't know. I mean, I can't really say more important because it's not that kind of a thing. But the lessons of life are really solid in everything that we learn, including music, including singing jazz. It's not just open your mouth. It's not just that. There's a lot more to it.
yeah, there's a lot more to it. And if you're going to be a professional that goes out on the road and has that whole uh, job description in front of them, not everybody can really hack that either. So
Yeah, yeah,
there's a lot to it, and sometimes the most successful musicians are the ones who are on the road all the time, but some people don't want to be on the road all the time. So then what do? Maybe they teach. So it's a lot of it's a complicated living being a jazz musician. Usually people are cobbling together a livelihood of some kind through a variety of different sources.
yeah. Are you doing any live performance now?
I am not. I am not. I've sort of, I'm not trying to. I usually say yes if somebody invites me. Oh, I did get invited to do something. I have to tell them no. But just remember that. But mostly, if somebody were to invite me to do something, I wouldn't mind going to like a venue that has no people and we can, have a nice piano and good sound system and stuff. I would do it like that, like a
Yeah,
concert
yeah.
thing, but not from my home. No.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to perform online. I did do a little show, kind of begrudgingly. No, I did two little things on shows, but I was like, no, who wants to see me singing with tracks, or worse, hear me singing with my mediocre piano, or even, and just even tracks. I mean, I just feel like that's not the experience I really want to share, particularly. It's not,
No.
you know.
I mean,
So
uh, there's a lot of people that like to put themselves practicing on Instagram and, here and there,
yeah,
and that's not really that interesting to me. And we're so flooded with stuff right now that I'm kind of actually taking a step back from the computer if I can, whenever I'm able to. I prefer not to be watching somebody on the computer. It's just
yeah.
nothing against anybody. I just don't have the bandwidth for it right now. Yeah, so
There's two shows I'm really liking kind of consistently. One, well, he's taking a minute break, but Keith, um, oh, jeez, my brain cells. I didn't have a good night's sleeping last night. Um, oh boy, you
what
know,
instrument does he
the,
play?
the j male jazz singer, Kurt Elling.
Oh
I
yeah.
knew it was with a K.
Oh, when he his the cocktail hour with Kurt. I saw some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that that's been really enjoyable, and also vocal gumbo with Janice and Lauren.
Yeah.
That's been really
They're doing that. I
super
have not
enjoyable.
watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed those two a lot. Um, and yeah, there's yeah, and then I mean, like you said, it's so flooded with. There's so much great music. It's just kind of wonderful and endless, and
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
it's
great.
a lot of, oh, I mean, even like in education right now, people like Tierney Sutton and Luciana and Kurt are available to anybody in the world.
Even Diane Reeves.
Even Diane Reeves, I didn't know that, but that's pretty
Yeah, I
good.
was talking to her the other day on here, and
Yeah.
she actually is expanding to allow more students to come in.
And then Chick just has an online academy. I'm sure you've seen that. And
Yeah, he really jumped in and created something.
they must have had that in the works before the pandemic. I'm sure they did. They must have.
Yeah, they were kind of doing a little bit of that, but I think that they talked it over. That the impression that I got was that they talked it over and they said, let's he probably said let's try something, but yeah, that's really great. Pretty much the only reason I don't go to that is because I'm not really a piano player. I mean, I play piano, but this is more a little more. I got this out from college. This is my Gemein heart from when I was 12. My student Gemein heart. But I'm learning. Check this out. I'm really getting the embouchure back, and I'm really digging it. It's really like, oh yeah, relax, relax here, and get this really pretty sound. It's been fun. It's been really nice.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm thinking of getting a guitar again myself. I used to play guitar a lot. I actually went out yesterday to buy a guitar because there's a guitar center
Oh,
near my house, and they were closed. I was like ready to buy. I was like,
wow.
I had my credit card out. I was gonna buy a guitar, and then they were closed. So now I'm like, meh. So I got to find another source. But yeah, it's nice to revisit those instruments from our past.
Yeah, it seems like most people I talk to these days aren't really doing. They're not really focusing on what they do. Like as a singer, they don't really go into the practice room as a singer, or I don't know. They get distracted into piano or whatever. The focus on creative energy is. It's
People are
like,
baking bread, Kathy. That's what people are doing.
say that again.
They're baking bread.
That is so true. Are you baking bread?
I'm eating bread. I'm not.
Oh, well, that's a whole other issue.
Toast is my like new, drug. Buttered toast with a cup of coffee. Doesn't get any
Oh,
better than that.
I know, I know. Yeah, it's really bad. I was, I was telling my friend that in the beginning, when the whole thing started happening, I wasn't really eating a lot, but I was having a piece of candy every day, one piece, and so every day I was having whatever. And one day I looked at my body and it frightened me because it looked like my mother's body, who was, definitely like wide, right, towards her latter years. And I thought, okay, that's it. That's it. So I kind of reined myself back in, but
Yeah,
still heavier than I had been, but whatever.
we all are, my dear.
Oh, Toby Simmons says she can recommend Norm Harris from Norm's Rare Guitars.
Okay. Is that where is that?
Toby, I forget where you are. Is that in LA or San Francisco? And the guy, Roland Ascaruns, who's the guy who bought the two of your records, he's funny. He's an old friend of mine from about 39 years ago. And he was a guitar player, and he probably still is a guitar player, but he doesn't think of himself like that. But he has a lot of guitars. We always joke about it. And he said, I have some guitars I could sell you.
Right.
Oh.
Guitar players have a lot of them.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's funny. Oh yeah, Toby, no, Toby's in LA. Well, Laurie's in San Francisco, or in
I'll be in
Oakland
LA at the end
actually.
of the month
Yeah.
for
Oh, okay. Well, Norm's Rare Guitars,
Norm's Rare Guitars. Okay.
pretty well known guitar shop. I'm
Yeah.
sure San Francisco has guitar shops specifically,
There
right?
are. Yeah, I just haven't really done a deep dive. I just was, not going to I'm not
Yeah.
looking for the ultimate instrument, just something to get my chops back on. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Have you spoken with Madeline or Vince?
I have not talked to Madeline, but I've talked to Kitty. Not that they're always connected, but I have talked to
Right.
Kitty. And yeah, so
Yeah. Oakland, man. Um, yeah, we had, do you know Rocco?
I don't think so.
So Rocco moved to San Francisco with his wife, she's an abstract, an avant-garde musician, and I'm trying to remember. I don't know her very well. I think she plays piano. And uh, long story short, Rocco had a club here called Rocco's. This was before the club Vibrato. Are you familiar with Herb Alpert's
I know
Vibrato?
that, yeah, I know the
So
name.
it was that location actually, but it was a whole different looking place. And that at the time was the only place in town that had modern jazz,
Uh-huh.
what I call modern jazz. And then he sold it to Herb Alpert, and then he started helping June at the Blue Whale. And then also meanwhile, he had moved up to Oakland actually, and he was working in a restaurant. I thought it had jazz in Oakland, like it sounded like a two-story place. Um,
Duende, maybe?
what is it?
Duende,
Maybe,
Spanish restaurant.
maybe. And he also came back down here and he created what is it called? It's a modern jazz festival that happens during the summer. The L.A. Angel or a lot. I can't remember the title, but anyway, I just wondered if you knew him because he was very, uh, active down here, and I thought he would be up there as well. Roland wants to know, I guess, electric or acoustic, he said.
Acoustic. I used to have a Gibson Hummingbird, 1958 Gibson Hummingbird that
Oh,
I sold, unfortunately. So
wow.
I don't think I'll have that nice of a guitar again for a while.
Well, you never know. Maybe somebody listening would
Yeah,
give you a guitar.
right. I
It
just,
could happen, Laurie.
I know it could happen. I need to get some water. Did you want to play like another song so I can go get that?
Yes, and just tell me what to play, and then I'll actually.
What to play? Why don't you do something from the Joni record? Uh,
Oh, cool.
let's see, what should it be? Well, you could do both sides now. It's just a duo with the pianist. It's not one of the big arrangements, although it's a little reharmed, and it was. I didn't want to record both sides now because that's the most obvious Joni tune, and so what we did, we were in the studio for 3 days, and at the end of each day, the pianist and I would do two takes of both sides now, and each time it was completely different, and so we got one that we liked well enough to put on the record.
Wow. Okay. Um,
And I'll be right back.
okay. the ads. I got to have a quick hand on the volume. Up, another ad. Okay. Wow, now they're doubling up on the ads.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air, feather canyons everywhere. I looked at clouds that way. Now they only block the sun, and they rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from all sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's clouds illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel, and every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave them laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know, don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love, don't really know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds, I looked at life that way, but now friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. I don't know life at all.
Very beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was quite beautiful. Um, I have two questions. One is, this is kind of a funny little technical question, but uh, your vibrato goes down, and a lot of vibratos go up. Up instead of ah.
Huh. That's interesting.
Has anyone ever talked about your vibrato?
Uh, no, but I definitely use the vibrato for effect.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
It's cool. I mean, yeah,
vibrato's a really interesting topic, and since I've been studying with Joni Mitchell and sort of investigating technique and stuff more as I've gotten older, and also just to be more knowledgeable because I hire a lot of people and I, uh, uh, want to make sure people understand good technique, healthy technique. But that's not, I didn't have any technical training early on, but I did find a vibrato for myself somehow. But I do remember not having a vibrato and then like finding the vibrato like in my early 20s. So I was mostly singing straight tone and then somehow, and I mean, I think probably I mean, hearing me sing a Joni Mitchell song, you're going to hear the Joni influence on some of that stuff. But
sure.
where I actually take that vibrato thing is that Joni was influenced by Annie Ross. And Annie also
Huh.
has kind of a slow vibrato. She has a slow vibrato and she also has like a tremolo that she'll use like, ba ba, like a shake or a tremolo at the end of a horn phrase, like a trumpet kind of thing. Um, and I'm just I'm drawing a line. I'm connecting the dots between Annie Ross and Joni Mitchell because Joni listened to Annie, early on, and um, and then I listened to both of them a lot. So I think it's sometimes there's a vibrato that comes out that's sort of a natural vibrato, that you don't really, and then there's the vibratos that you actually are curating.
News. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Truth be told about that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I also was influenced by Nancy Wilson's, holding out the straight tone and then going into the vibrato at the end. That's also in there. But as far as it going under the pitch, I haven't heard that before, but interesting observation.
It's interesting. Yeah, I remember a friend of mine years and years ago. Uh, we grew up in musical situations together, and her vibrato was different than mine. And I mean, at that time, I called it backwards, because it was opposite mine. But yeah, it's interesting. But the use of um, kind of a vocal attitude is great, and that's actually what leads everything, right? And it should lead everything, I think. I mean, I was talking about Tom Waits, right? I mean, I love Tom Waits, and he absolutely does not have a perfect voice, but I love him, because why? Because he's just so singing with his attitude, and the inflections that come out communicate, you know, right?
Yeah. I mean, I often like an untrained voice more than a trained voice. That's just me. But I prefer sometimes just to, from like world music and folk music and, some of the singer songwriters and stuff. I like those kind of voices. That's what I'm going to be more interested in listening to those sort of authentic, natural, untrained voices sometimes than these highly, developed. I always appreciate a great voice. I always appreciate good technique, and it can keep me, it can sustain me for a long time to hear that. But when it gets down to like something I want to hear that's going to touch me and move me, it's generally not from those types of singers. That's just me.
Right.
But
Who has a really amazing voice is Cecile McLaurin Salvant.
Oh yeah.
Wow, you can really hear.
All colors are there.
Whew,
Yeah.
yeah, her voice is so well trained and well used. It's really quite amazing to listen to her sing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I'm with you too. Yeah, I tend to want to hear. I don't care about super perfection. It kind of turns me off.
Not so
For the
much.
most
I
part,
mean, I
unless it's
remember Betty here. I've heard Betty Carter. I don't even countless times. I don't know how many times I heard her, but I was such a devotee and fan of hers, especially just the live stuff. Her live performances were really spectacular. And I remember when I first heard her, the very first time I was, I think, 18 years old, and I was at this summer camp before going to college, and they played a bunch of jazz singers, and they gave this sort of disclaimer in the beginning of playing something from Betty, saying, "Well, it might take it might take you a while to really like this because she sings out of tune. She's got intonation problems, and that was not the right thing to say actually to a group of like high school kids when you're talking about one of the
yeah.
greatest singers, because that every now and then that still is back there like, oh, is there something wrong with Betty singing because she's a little flat here and there? And actually it doesn't bother me. And if I hadn't heard that like by a authority figure, it may never have even been a topic in my mind.
Yeah.
It just comes with her. It just comes with her. That's how she approaches things. And if you look at um, well, I mean, gosh, when she was recording, there was no auto tune. They're just, pretty
No.
friggin' great performances. I mean, come on. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I just lost my train of thought. What was I going to say about that? Um, in any case, it's like I think it's a really interesting thing when you're an educator like I am, and I do so much with other setting up programs and curriculums and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes I think it's sort of odd that we're studying people who never had formal educations in music, and we're creating etudes out of their scat solos, or we're whatever we're doing, and I don't know. I think jazz education is a very slippery slope. I'm just going to say that about it, and that's what I do for a living, but it's a slippery slope in so many different ways. And if we don't have the cultural aspects, and the jazz institutions are so white, and the music comes from black music, and there's just there's sort of this sanitizing of the art form that goes on in institutions, and people get caught up in doing it the right way instead of the soulful or more creative, or so having right and wrong ways to play jazz. And I don't know, I mean, obviously you need to make the changes, and there's a million things you need to be able to do to be a professional, but um, sounding like other people are adhering to like a really strict academic perspective on the music kind of doesn't work for me actually.
Yeah,
So
which is interesting considering you're the chair of of the
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you're running a conservatory and people are getting degrees in the music, you have to have standards, and they need to be able to do certain things and what have you with their musicianship. But that doesn't mean that's what can I say? This is really revolutionary. I probably shouldn't even say this, but I'm just going to say it because it's been on my mind lately. About jazz education and even vocal jazz education, which is pretty big business. I mean, a lot of people make a living just doing workshops, and there's a lot of opportunities for musicians to make a living as educators, and for people to have an opportunity to try out and work on jazz, in these settings. But I, I sometimes wonder if singers just got a really basic music education, learn to play piano, be able to play through charts, have some basic theory, blah blah blah, history, and then just be left to their own devices to figure out the singing part. I wonder if we would have any more creative people putting music out in the world, or would it be less because they're not as fully formed maybe with all the vocal type classes that we do. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's an interesting question.
Well, I think it's interesting too, and you know what it reminds me of strangely. Um, so trying to think of this newscaster. Anyway, one of the famous kind of young newscasters who came up over the years. He did a show. This is exactly what you're talking about, but not in music. He did a show on education and elementary school education and or junior high education. And they first of all, our educational system was set up by a man, I think, who actually wanted factory workers. That's how our educational system was originally set up. And so he was in this school, and they had a program. They had a lot of foreign speaking kids who didn't really have English down, and so they separated the class. In one class, they gave all the standard type of education. This involved computers too. So on the other side, they gave them computers. They taught them how to use computers, but they didn't teach them how to solve the problems. So they just had them figure out how to solve the problems with the tools of computer. They scored higher than the other people, the other kids, and so it's kind of like that, isn't it? The music education that you're talking about. It's like give them the tools, and then let them create.
Well, I mean, it's definitely something to consider. I mean, anybody who's a professional artist of any kind, whether in any medium, has pretty much, maybe not so much with dance, but it's a solitary pursuit. You have to be able to find a place where you can create and make stuff and come up with stuff. And I think you can become a proficient musician through some of the educational environments, but it's not going to make you a creative artist, right? You can become
Right.
proficient, but that doesn't mean you're going to be creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that creativity and that kind of thing, like one of the things I do in the conservatory, I teach a lyric writing class, and I use The Artist Way as our
Oh,
book for that class. And that
interesting.
gets you off into all kinds of other things about your just getting the creative flow going and all that.
Great idea, Laurie.
A lot of people have done that book, and it's great. And every time I do that book, I get a little something out of it myself,
Oh man, that has actually saved my ass before.
Yeah.
I was on the road and I was doing those 20-minute, the writing in the morning. It saved my ass.
Yeah.
I mean, just that alone,
The morning pages is
the
good.
morning page. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that you used that book for lyric writing.
hmm
Very interesting. Yeah.
Well, because there's tricks and things that you can do in writing exercises, and any writer knows that. And there's writing workshops you can go to, and you give it a prompt and whatever. But really, how are you going to generate it? Where are you going to pull from? How are you going to find something? And it's both internal and external. How can you become the observer and find your way to articulate that? So yeah.
Great idea. I'm gonna look at my Artist Way now.
Good.
That's one of my books in the corner of my room. I have a pile of books by my bed that, I guess I'm reading all at the same time. My most favorite right now is Deepak Chopra's How to Find God.
Oh, very good.
Keep loving everything I read. I just go, yeah, he's just so cool. Let's see. I think you answered some of the. Oh, Jay Clayton is here.
Oh, Jay. Hi, Jay. We need to talk. Talking about you earlier.
Yeah, she usually listens in. She and Sheila were on together. It was really talk about tribe, man. It's great.
Yeah.
She said, "Here, Laurie, regarding jazz education, good topic to discuss in the future. Love to you both." Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. We're definitely at a huge turning point, and
Agreed. I
yeah,
think we're at a huge turning point, and I also I mean, the way that we uh, teach jazz, like one of the things I brought up to my boss was that I felt we should have an oral history component to our jazz degree. And that's everything from just learning things by ear, from someone else, which is done like in Indian music. And that's a really strong tradition for people to learn that way. And then just also just having people that are still alive that are part of the original, crowd. So Jay Clayton and Sheila Jordan and Nancy King and all those people we were talking about, those are people that are, you know, they're from the original group, I would say, in terms of
Yeah,
creating this music. And we need to hear from them as much as possible. And we need to hear from more the black community in jazz education. I think there could be a whole blues type of a deal that we sometimes forget about. I mean, of course, we talk about the blues, but how well do we really know that and how that led into jazz and can we do it? I get students sometimes that can't hear a 12 bar blues. They can't hear the top of the tune. Well, that should be just be instinctual, right? So
yeah,
if it's not instinctual, then we need to find ways to teach it in a way that can create better instincts, more intrinsic ways of integrating the music into your body, into your soul. But to just learn a bunch of notes just means you learned a bunch of notes. That's all that means, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So, not to be a downer or anything, but I just think about this stuff all the time of, because I'm always wanting to find better ways to talk about music with people. And I think, like, one thing I never used to do for like years and years is I'd never talk about myself. I'd never tell I have a lot of good stories about how I learned something or where I went or a concert or whatever. I sang with this guy or that girl or whatever. And what I realize is students, they really want to hear those stories. They really want to find out, like, how was that for you? If things are just a technical exercise, it doesn't go very far. So, and some people are better at telling stories than others, you know.
I've had this workshop series for 20 years, at my house, and two people come to mind when you're talking about that. One is Meredith D'Ambrosio.
Oh yeah, she's lovely.
She's lovely. Her teaching was not super strong, but by the end of the class, literally the students had gotten down on the floor, sitting near her and listening to her tell stories. That was what they wanted and they got and they and what she gave, and it was like that was a surprising one. And Nancy, of course, Nancy is a talker. I mean, she's more of a, she's not the teacher. And Steve was with her, so Steve actually was the teacher, and Nancy was the storyteller, but which was great too. But also, I wanted to tell you, do you know Bruce Foreman, the guitar player?
Yeah, I mean, I know him from back in the day when he was living in San Francisco, and
Oh yeah, okay. So he had a school down here. It was a nonprofit school. And what he did was he got a bunch of professional guitar players to come and hang out. And the students, there was no music. The students had to come with their guitar and just start playing. I mean, I assume they could ask questions occasionally, but really it was about the playing. And he actually grew a bunch of fabulous guitar players out of that.
I would imagine. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of the crux of the vocal curriculum that I created for the conservatory, which we have a professional rhythm section, not student rhythm section, like they're pros, and the singers it's a 3 hour class every week, and the singers bring in their tunes. I mean, they have certain repertoire that they need to be working on, but the whole point of it is that they get to work in real time with real jazz musicians and interact and have that experience of what it feels like to, you know, sing with people that are better than you.
I remember one time somebody said, "Why don't you have a bad piano player come in?" I'm like, "How am I going to hire a bad piano player?" You know, that's,
Or why?
yeah, right. Well, why is a better idea. What's the biggest piece of musical or professional advice you received that has influenced you to continue performing? Do you share something you've learned with turn students to influence them? I'm not sure exactly what the last sentence means. Maybe it's, did you receive some advice that you in turn have shared?
Well, there's one story that I tell that was advice that I share, which was when I first got to Graz. I started pretty early, like right away, started working with Fritz Power, the pianist that was there, and he was also teaching when I was there. And we had a gig at the club in Vienna, Porgy and Bess, which is sort of the Yoshis or the Village Vanguard of Central Europe, and or at least Austria. And so prior to my doing that job there, it was all these very famous singers like Jay Clayton and Sheila Jordan and Andy Bay and Mark Murphy and Tom Lellis, and just, just this array of, just luminaries. And I was coming out of some brutal years with my addiction. I was like not like super duper confident. I was just like sort of happy to be where I was, but I wasn't like uh, confident, to be honest. And so this was the first gig I did in Austria, and the whole club was filled with singers. So it was like past students that had been with Mark and Sheila and Jay, and it
Oh,
was like
right.
the professionals. So I was absolutely terrified, and I was standing backstage, and Fritz was next to me, and my leg was shaking. Like, I don't ever
Oh,
even remember being that scared. I was just terrified. And I looked at Fritz, and I just said, I am so nervous. And he just looked at me and goes, this isn't about you. This is about the music. And he's like,
oh,
snap out of it. So
oh,
but I mean, he said it was very kind and a little bit funny, but mostly it was just like, this isn't, has nothing to do with you. You are just the vehicle for the music to come out. So I went out on stage, in the first few bars were a little shaky, and then I just forgot about all the people that were out there who, either liking it or not liking it. It was none of my business whether they liked it or not, you
oh,
know.
that's great. Yeah.
So that was and I I think stage fright can be a really debilitating thing, especially for new singers and developing singers. So I always pass that along. It really helped me. Like, it was right in the moment too. So um, yeah,
That's beautiful.
that's one little story. I'm sure
I
there's
like
many
it.
others.
I like it. And you know what? It's been 2 hours.
Wow, fantastic. That went faster than I thought it would.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's so cool. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, Cathy, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
What should we look for next coming from you?
Boy, oh boy, your guess is as good as mine. I have something that I was going to put out early next year, but I don't think I'm going to do that now. So I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait and see where the dust settles here with everything.
Yeah. Um, okay. And I'm just going to tell people tomorrow, just the rest of this week. Um, Tuesday, I'm having the guitarist Frank Potenza, who's a wonderful, wonderful player and um, is over at USC. And Wednesday, really beautiful Brazilian singer and artist Katia Moraes. Oh, I always screw up her name. Moraes. I'm going to have to ask for the correct pronunciation. And somebody knows it who's listening, and they're going to correct me. Um, Possibly Barbara Morrison. I'm not. I'm not sure because sometimes Barbara's hard to reach, so I'm trying to get a hold of her and confirm. Ralph Humphrey, drummer who's been with everybody and superb drummer. And Sunday we're going to end the week with Jennifer Lightham, who's a great bass player and singer. And what else did I want to tell you guys? Oh yeah, one other thing. next week, Tuesday is the 100th day, and my special guest is me. Several friends, including Kathy Cousins and Catherine Bostick, have pushed me to do this, so I'm going to do that. And yeah, that's about it. And want to encourage you guys to take time for yourselves and listen to what you really want to be doing. And yeah, it's this is the time right now to do that. So go for it. So thanks, Laurie.
Thanks, Kathy. It was my pleasure.
I loved your music too. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.